There was an empty inch on the bodice of her wedding gown. By the end of the morning, that empty inch would decide everything. Collins Yates, 26, a second-grade teacher at a Title I school in Queens, stood in a Manhattan church bridal suite and finished pinning her veil. Black, beautiful, slender, a sweetheart neckline she had paid for in night shifts, grading workbooks. In 1 hour, she would marry Kang Seojun, the quiet one, 6'1", tuxedo cut sharp, a thin black dragon tattoo running down the right side of his neck and disappearing under the collar. Then the door opened without a knock. His mother walked in first, black couture, double-strand pearls, a mouth set in a line that did not move. Behind her his aunt, charcoal gray, sapphire brooch, arms already crossed. The mother looked Collins up and down the way a woman inspects something she has decided not to buy. Then she spoke, quietly, calmly, 6 words that the bride would carry to the altar. The grandmother gasped, the aunt smirked. Collins did not move, and in the corridor outside that door, the groom was already listening. But what he did with what he heard. Before starting the story, comment down below where you are watching from and what time it is there. If stories of karma, love, and hidden truths move you, leave a like, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and click join to become a member and help our channel. Collins pressed the last hairpin into place and felt the veil settle against her shoulders like a held breath. The mirror in the Manhattan church bridal suite showed her a stranger she liked. White gown, sweetheart neckline, a waist she had not seen in a year of grading workbooks past midnight. She turned a 1/4 inch and the A-line skirt swept the floor with a sound she would remember in 20 years. Halmione Sunhi Kang sat in the velvet armchair near the window, small inside her pale pink hanbok, hands folded over a square of silk. She had not spoken for 9 minutes, Collins counted. "You are quiet today, Halmione. I am looking." The old woman rose without using the armrest. 81 years and she still refused help across a room. She crossed to Collins and lifted the veil with 2 fingers, the way a person handles a letter that matters. "My grandson will forget how to breathe when he sees you." Collins laughed. The laugh broke in the middle, the way a laugh breaks when it is doing the work of a cry. She caught it before it finished and tilted her chin up so the mascara would not run. "Don't make me ruin this face, Halmione. I bought this lipstick for him." Sunhi smiled. Then her eyes traveled down to the bodice and stayed there, an empty inch of satin between the lace and the corseted seam. A place where something should be and was not. "You forgot the brooch." "I didn't forget. I didn't bring one." Collins had thought about it for 3 weeks. Her mother's pin was at the bottom of a box in storage in Atlanta with everything her mother had owned. She had not been able to open that box yet. She would one day, not today. Sunhi pressed her palm flat against the empty satin, the way you press a bandage. "Then we fix that." She turned and walked back to her chair to find her bag. Slowly, with presence. The room reorganized itself around her without being asked. Collins watched her and thought about her future children. Not vaguely, specifically. A boy with Seojun's monolid eyes and her cheekbones. A girl with her hair and his quiet hands. The kind of children whose grandmothers would teach them to braid and to bow. 2 grandmothers, 2 languages over the same crib. A motherhood where the people who shared her baby's blood would love them without an asterisk. That was what she had to lose. She closed her fist for 1 beat and breathed in through her nose. The door opened without a knock. Mira Yoon came in first. Black couture midi, double-strand pearls, dark red lipstick set in a line that did not move. Behind her, Heir Kang, charcoal gray, sapphire brooch at the collar, arms already crossing. 2 women who knew how a room was supposed to bend toward them. Sunhi straightened in her chair. The silk square folded itself in her hand. "Miraya." Mira did not look at her mother-in-law. She looked at Collins. The look began at the heels and traveled up. It paused at the waist. It paused at the throat. It arrived at the face and stayed there a moment too long, the way a person inspects something they have decided not to buy. Beautiful, Mira said. The word landed wrong. Heir made a sound that was almost a laugh and almost a cough. Collins did not move. She had been a second-grade teacher at a Title I school in Queens for 4 years. She had stood in front of 7-year-olds, whose parents had screamed at her about reading levels at 7:45 in the morning. She knew how to keep her hands at Hersud's. "Thank you for coming in," Collins said. "Seojun told me you would stop by. He did not tell me what to say." No, he wouldn't. Mira took one step closer, just one. The pearls moved against the dress and made no noise. "You can wear our family name after today, Collins. That is a thing I will allow." Sunhi's small hand lifted off the armrest. Mira did not turn her head. "But I will not accept a black heir in my family. I am telling you while there is still time. Love passes, blood stays." The room held still. The veil did not move. The brooch was not there to catch the light. Heir's sideways smirk arrived right on schedule. Sunhi gasped. A real gasp, the kind that comes from a chest that has not been startled in years. Her hand flew to her mouth and stopped halfway. Collins felt something hot start in her stomach and decided where it would go before it got there. Not to her eyes, not to her hands, to her voice. She let it travel up slowly and pass through the place where her teacher voice lived, the voice she used on the second morning of school, when a child said the wrong word about another child. "I teach children, Mrs. Yoon, 6 and 7 years old. I teach them not to hate what is different." She let one beat fall. "It's sad that some grown women still need that lesson." Heir's smirk slipped 1 millimeter. Mira's mouth did not change, but her jaw set in a new place, harder, lower, the way a jaw sets when a person has been answered and was not prepared to be answered. Sunhi was already standing. "I am going to find a brooch for my granddaughter-in-law's dress. Halmioni," Collins said softly. "You don't have to. I am not asking permission." The old woman walked past Mira without looking at her and reached for the doorknob. Her hand trembled on the brass. She steadied it. She turned the knob. The corridor light fell across the carpet in a long white stripe and held the door open behind her as she stepped out. Mira finally turned her head. She looked at Collins one more time. Then she looked at the empty inch on the bodice. Then she smiled, with the mouth only. "We will see what your groom thinks," she said, "when he hears about this conversation." She did not know he was already in the corridor. Sunhi did not answer her daughter-in-law. She bent down, picked up a small velvet box from the dresser, and held it against her chest like a child she was about to hand to a stranger. "I forgot a brooch in the sacristy," she said. Her voice was soft. Her hands were not. "I will fetch it now. Stay seated, Collins. Both of you, do not say another word to her until I return." Mira opened her mouth. Heir uncrossed her arms. "I said do not speak." The room obeyed. Sunhi crossed to the door, paused, and looked at Collins one more time. The girl was still standing in the white gown, chin level, breathing evenly through her nose like she had been taught to breathe in a classroom full of 30 children who could smell weakness. Sunhi felt something hot rise in her throat and pushed it back down, where the dignifying pinned-up white hair kept everything in place. She stepped into the corridor and closed the door behind her with the softness of someone who did not want anyone counting the seconds. Seojun was 3 doors down beside a long mirror, working a silver cufflink through the buttonhole of his crisp white shirt. The black tuxedo hung straight across his shoulders. The high satin collar had ridden up an inch, and the head of the dragon tattoo curled out from beneath it, ink thin against pale skin. He saw her and his hands stopped. "Halmioni." She walked to him quickly, smaller than she had been a minute ago, and gripped his wrist with both hands. The jade ring on her right hand pressed into his pulse. "Your mother is in there." His jaw set. And your aunt. His other hand closed around her fingers. They are hurting that girl. Seojun began to move toward the bridal suite. Sunhi held him in place with a strength that surprised both of them. No, the whisper voice came out sharper than she had intended. Not in anger, not now. Go listen. Listen to every word your mother speaks. Listen to what your bride says back. Go for truth, my boy, not for blood. He looked down at her. The cold calculation that lived in his eyes in every other room of his life softened for 1 second, and then hardened in a new direction. Where? She turned him toward the corridor she had just come from. Halfway down the hall, a carved wood divider stood against the wall, an old screen the church used to hide ushers during private rites. Behind it was a sliver of space, and behind that the door of the bridal suite, cracked an inch where Sunhi had not pulled it fully shut. Seojun understood without being told. He took 3 long steps, slid behind the divider, and folded himself into the dark like a man who had folded himself into smaller, worse darks before. His back pressed to the wall. The dragon tattoo disappeared completely beneath the collar when his chin came down. Sunhi did not look at him again. She walked past the divider toward the sacristy, slow, as if her errand were the only thing in the world. Inside the suite, Mira had already started again. Sit, Collins. I want you sitting when I say this, so you do not mistake it for theater. Collins did not sit. She lowered herself onto the arm of the chair, half-perched, hands folded over the antique pearl empty spot on her bodice. The fine tulle veil shifted across her shoulders. I am listening. Heirin laughed once low. She is listening. My son, Mira said, will give this family son. That son will sit at the head of a table that was set 3 generations before you were born. There are photographs on that table, Collins. Faces, names in a book. Do you understand what I am telling you? You are telling me my children will not look like the photographs. I am telling you they will not be the photographs. Outside the door, behind the divider, Seojun's right hand closed into a fist so slowly that the leather of his watch strap made no sound. There are women in Seoul, Heirin added, who would die to wear what you are wearing today. Real women. The kind who carry the right blood forward. Then you should have invited one of them, Collins said. The words came out smooth and unhurried, the way a teacher delivers a correction to a child who is interrupted twice. Because I am the one your son asked. Mira took 1 step closer. The pearls at her throat did not move. Listen to me, girl. If God gives my son children with you, I will look at them and I will see a stranger's face. I will not hold them. I will not name them. I will not pretend. The silence in the room weighed. Collins did not flinch. She lifted her chin 1/2 inch, the 1/2 inch a Title I teacher learns to lift in front of a principal who has just questioned her grades. If God gives us children, she said, they will be loved by me, by him, and by anyone worthy of standing near them. I cannot choose who shares their blood, but I can choose who gets access to my peace. And ma'am, after today, you will need an invitation. Behind the divider, Seojun closed his eyes for the length of 1 breath. He had heard enough. The viewer expected the door to fly open. The viewer expected the tuxedoed man to step into that room and break his mother in half with 1 sentence and 3 syllables of her own name. He did none of it. He opened his eyes, breathed out through his nose, and walked. Away from the door, away from the suite. Down the corridor, past the cufflink mirror, past the sacristy door swinging back toward him. As Sunhi emerged with the velvet box pressed to her chest, she saw him pass. She saw the set of his shoulders. She saw the back of his neck as he turned the corner, the dragon tattoo, a fine black line, vanishing into the white shirt collar. Her hand flew to her mouth. She had told him to listen. She had not told him to leave. She stood frozen in the corridor with the brooch trembling in its box, and for the first time in 81 years, Sunhi Kang was afraid she had read her own grandson wrong. Collins turned away from the door the moment it clicked shut behind Mira and Heirin. The bridal suite felt smaller now, not in size, in air. The bouquet of white peonies on the vanity looked too white. The veil draped over the chair looked too long. She walked past Sunhi without speaking and stopped in front of the full-length mirror by the window. And she made herself look. The empty space on the bodice stared back, a small rectangle of clean satin where a brooch had been promised, the exact spot Mira had scanned with her eyes, the way a buyer scans a price tag. Collins lifted her hand and pressed 2 fingers against that empty space and held them there. Her own heartbeat answered through the fabric. Strong, steady, not enough. Sunhi said her name once, soft. Then the door opened again and Sunhi slipped out into the corridor, and Collins was alone. 90 seconds of silence. She counted them by the second hand on her wristwatch. The thin silver one her father had given her at graduation, the one she still hadn't taken off. Even though the bracelet didn't match the dress, each tick landed in her chest like a knock on a door she didn't want answer. I will not accept a black heir in my family. The sentence didn't fade. It looped. It rearranged itself. It put on different voices, Mira's first, then Heirin's smirk wrapped around it, then a voice that sounded like Collins's own mother from a memory she hadn't visited in years. Her mother packing her lunch for 2nd grade, smoothing down the collar of her uniform, saying, "Baby, the world will try, and you walk through it anyway." The world had tried. The world had walked into her bridal suite in pearls and dark red lipstick. Collins thought about the children. The ones who didn't exist yet. The ones she had already named in private. The way a teacher names everything she loves. She thought about a small hand in her hand. At a family dinner, she could no longer picture without flinching. She thought about a grandmother who would smile at the camera and look through the child like a window. She thought about birthdays, Christmas, the slow corrosion of 1,000 small rooms. She set both hands on the vanity to keep them from shaking. "Call it off," said a quiet voice from somewhere honest. "Call it off and protect them. Protect the ones who haven't taken a breath yet. You can love that man in a smaller life. You don't have to bring children into a house that already has a door closed against them." She closed her eyes. For 30 seconds she let herself imagine it. She imagined walking out the side entrance of the church in the white dress, climbing into a cab with the veil still pinned, letting Queens swallow her back. She imagined telling Seojun later. She imagined the look on his face. The control of it, the not asking why because he would already know why. The image hurt more than the sentence had. She opened her eyes and looked at the mirror. And the bride in the mirror looked back at her. And the bride in the mirror was not a woman about to run. The bride in the mirror was a 2nd grade teacher from Queens who, 2 Octobers ago, had stood in front of a parent who had called her a slur in front of a child and had said, in the same voice she used to read picture books, "Sir, you are scaring your son. Please step into the hallway." The bride in the mirror was the daughter of a woman who had walked through fire in low heels. The bride in the mirror was the woman who had said at the altar of her own life, a long time ago, "I will not be made small by people who are smaller than me." She breathed in, she breathed out. She would not call it off. She would walk that aisle. She would put her hand in his. And whatever happened in front of God and Mira and the cameras and the congregation would happen with her standing, inside her full height, not crouched against a wall. The decision sat in her chest like a stone that had finally stopped moving. The door opened behind her. Sunhi crossed the room with the small velvet box held in both hands like something sacred. Her white hair was still perfect. Her pale pink hanbok caught the morning light through the stained glass. She stopped at Collins's shoulder and met her in the mirror. "I am family," Sunhi whispered. "And I want you." She opened the box. The antique pearl brooch caught the light, old, soft, lived in. Sunhi's small trembling hands lifted it, pinned it carefully into the empty space on the bodice. The satin held it. The space was no longer empty. Sunhi cupped Collins's face. Her palms were warm. "My child," she said. "Walk." Collins's eyes filled and did not fall. She nodded once. She turned from the mirror. She lifted the veil into place. She walked toward the door. In a smaller room at the other end of the church, Seojun stood in front of a mirror of his own. His best man, Daniel Cho, leaned in the doorway with his hands in his pockets and watched the back of Seojun's head for a long time before saying anything. The dragon tattoo along the right side of Seojun's neck showed for a second when he tilted his chin to fix the bow tie. Then the high collar swallowed it again. "You good?" Daniel asked quietly. Seojun adjusted the cuff of his left sleeve. He did not look at Daniel. He looked at himself. "I have never been more certain," he said. Down the corridor, a string quartet began the first bars of the processional. Collins stepped into the hallway in white pearl brooch, glowing against the bodice. Sunhi at her elbow, and on the far side of the church, behind a closed door he had not yet opened, Seojun Kang reached for the doorknob with a hand that did not shake. Seojun opened the door before his hand could remember. It was shaking. The corridor was empty. The string quartet kept playing somewhere ahead of him. The notes thinned through the walls. He walked toward the sanctuary the way a man walks toward a verdict he has already written. At the back of the church, the doors were still closed. The best man whispered something about timing. Seojun did not hear it. He took his position at the altar and looked at the wood of the floor, then at the officiant, then at the front pew where his mother sat with her clutch on her knees and Heir beside her, sapphire brooch catching the candlelight. Mira met his eyes once. She did not smile. She did not need to. She thought the conversation upstairs had ended in the bridal suite. The doors opened. Collins walked in on Sunhi's arm. The pearl brooch on her bodice caught the light and threw it across the first row. Heads turned. Somebody in the back exhaled. Seojun did not move, but something in his shoulders settled, the way a weight settles into the place it was made for. She reached him. He took her hand. He bent his head, low enough that only she could hear. "I know." Oh. Her fingers tightened in his. "You know what? I heard." She did not ask which words. She did not need to. The pew where Mira sat was 4 meters behind them. Seojun kept his eyes on Collins. "Stay with me," he said. "1 minute. I have something to say first." He turned to the officiant. His voice was quiet, the voice he used when men twice his size went silent at a table. "Father, before the vows, may I address the room?" The officiant looked at him, then at Collins. Collins gave the smallest nod. The officiant stepped back. Seojun faced the congregation. He did not raise his voice. He did not have to. The church had the kind of acoustics that turned a whisper into law. "Thank you all for coming," he said. "Most of you came to see a wedding. A few of you came to see whether I would go through with it." A small movement in the front row. Hiren's arms folded across her chest. Mira's hand closed around the strap of her clutch. "There are people in this room who confuse family with control," Seojun said. "There are people who speak of blood as if love were a threat to it. I have listened to that language my whole life. I learned it before I learned my own name." He paused. He looked at Collins. He looked back at the pews. "I am not here today to translate it for anyone. I am here to end it." Sunhi, 3 rows back on the bride's side, lifted a small handkerchief to her mouth. "If Collins gives me children," Seojun continued, "they will be my heirs, not despite their skin, not despite her blood. With every ounce of pride I have, because they will be hers too. Anyone who cannot stand in a room with that truth is welcome to leave before the vows. The door is behind you. I will not name you. I will not stop you. But after today, you do not get to sit at my table and pretend you respect the woman beside me." Nobody moved. Mira's eyes dropped to the carpet. Hairin's jaw locked so hard the muscle jumped in her cheek. Neither woman stood, neither walked out. Sunhi was weeping without sound, both hands at her face. Seojun turned back to Collins. The officiant stepped forward again, found his place in the book, and cleared his throat softly. Collins was looking up at Seojun, as though she had just understood why he had closed the sweet door so carefully behind him an hour ago. The vows came. Seojun went first. "I will be your home," he said. "When any place tries to make you feel foreign, I will be the name on every door that closes in your face. I will not ask you to be smaller. I will not ask you to be quieter. I will stand between you and anything in this world that confuses you for a guest." Collins's breath caught once. She steadied it. "I marry the man who sees me," she said, "who chose me, who heard what I had to carry and decided to carry it with me. Not the approval of his family, not the convenience of his name, him. The rings, the pronouncement, the kiss. White petals went up over the aisle. Children laughed somewhere near the back. Mira and Heir stood when the room stood, because not standing would have been louder than standing. They clapped. The sound was thin. Nobody noticed except the three people who needed to. Sunhi waited at the steps as the bride and groom came down. She did not speak. She placed a kiss on her own palm and blew it toward Collins, slow the way she had blown kisses to her grandson when he was a boy. Then she pressed her trembling hand to the pearl brooch on her own giogori. Same brooch on both women now. Same family. The black car waited at the curb, tin cans tied to the bumper, ribbons trailing. Seojun opened the door for Collins. She gathered the gown and slid in. He followed. The driver pulled away. Collins let her head fall against his shoulder. She laughed once, low, the laugh of a woman who had not been allowed to breathe for an hour, and was finally remembering how. "You just emotionally threatened half your family at the altar?" Seojun looked straight ahead. His face did not change. "And I would marry you again tomorrow," he said. "To threaten the other half." The car turned the corner. The cans rattled on the asphalt. On the church steps, Sunhi lifted her hand once, palm flat, the way a mother sends a child out into a world that does not yet deserve them. The pearl brooch on the white gown caught the last of the afternoon light and disappeared into the rest of Collins Yates's life. 6 weeks later, in a kitchen that smelled of ginger and rice, Sunhi placed her trembling hand over Collins's and felt something move beneath the satin of her shirt that nobody in that family had yet been told about. If you want to watch all the stories without any ads and also get access to bonus scenes, extended epilogues, and exclusive spicy chapters, head over to our Patreon. Scan the QR code on the screen. The link is in the description or in the pinned comment. See you there. If this story moved you, stop for a moment and reflect. Have you ever stood in a room where the people who shared your loved one's blood made you feel like a stranger and chose not to lower your voice to fit theirs? Have you ever found out that the person you were about to marry was listening at a door, deciding who they truly belonged to, and when someone you loved said, "I am family and I want you," did you let yourself believe them? Tell us your experiences and feelings in the comments. We read them all. And if you believe in stories about dignity, chosen family, and public promises, leave a like, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and click join to become a part of our community and help the channel.